All right, man. So let's talk about, in the book, the whole book kind of focuses on a single operation after you had a couple soldiers get killed, trying to recover a airdrop. Can you kind of explain what happened there, and then kind of how the book goes? You want to talk through the book and give people a little bit of insight on that?
Yeah, so in a nutshell, what happened is like I was kind of describing. It was a very docile type of valley where NATO forces up to that point didn't fuck with the Taliban there, and the Taliban were embedded, had been there for years, never really got fucked with by NATO in general. Had good reserves, had a lot of different skill sets from their fighters. So we literally just showed up. Like we showed up. It actually took us like 5 days. It was the worst convoy I've ever been on. But we got there, and like literally we got there in the middle of the night, like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. Literally noon the next day is when the kind of triggering event happened, where the 82nd Airborne were getting a resupply airdrop. The bundles get blown off of the DZ, the drop zone, and they end up some go in the water, so some go across the river, which was anything across the river was like, you don't go. That was no man's land. Nobody went there. And as soon as that happened, one of the soldiers, Sergeant Sherman, went in. He tried to because you got to understand that these airdrops, like if they lose this pallet, that means if that was a pallet of, I don't know, fucking water, like that's less water they have to drink.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
These are literally supplies to keep
yeah,
them alive.
yeah, fuel, water, rations. Like, yeah, if you lose it, then you don't eat. So they went in with full gear on. It wasn't a gradual slope into the river. It was more like a shelf, a jagged shelf. He ends up falling off the shelf, all of his gear on. He ends up getting sucked under. This isn't like a slow river. This is like a kind of like a rough gorge type of river. Real violent, wicked undertows, super deep in the middle. So he goes in, and I believe it was Islet might have went in first. But either way, they both end up going under, and they don't come up. Their bodies don't come up. So this sends this little outpost, this little forward operating base, into a frenzy, because the last thing anyone ever wants is these guys to disappear and never to be found again.
Yeah.
Or worse, the enemy finds them.
Yeah. Exactly.
So this creates this massive outpour from the FOB to set up a security perimeter. They're going to the other side of the riverbank, and at this point, the Taliban, they're watching, but they don't realize what had happened. That what we were responding to. They thought this was some type of big military operation that was making a move on them. So they start returning in kind, with fire and stuff. So that was what triggers everything to happen. And from that point, the 82nd Battalion commander who came up, he saw this as his time to shine as a lieutenant colonel, and he's going to win this war this way. And that sets off a series of clearing operations, key leader engagements, expanding the security bubble around the FOB, and just a long stem of things. But it was all triggered from that one event, which carried us all the way through winter and into the spring, which ended up with this massive clearing operation we did with ODA 1314, I believe it was, and like 200 Afghan commandos to this village to the south of us, and it was very active. I'll put it to you that way. We were not bored.
So you guys had a couple hundred people in this operation. How big do you think the enemy was?
In all honesty, probably about 60 or 70.
Yeah.
But they had all the advantages because they had occupied this village for as long as we had known. So they already had their firing positions set up. They already had a network of how they would resupply and where weapons were cached. And on top of that, they had this village had an elaborate tunnel system underneath of it from the Russian era.
Really?
So
That's weird.
yeah. So it was it was one of those counter defense things that they did for the Russians when they were there, because that was a Russian textile factory that we were in. Matter of fact, there was an old fucking T-72 sitting out front.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Total Red Dawn like type of. But so the tunneling system, the way that they were unobstructed from the south, so they could backfill with fighters. Like they had a setup. They had it set up to hold.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of very room to room type of stuff, compound to compound type of stuff, with an enemy that could maneuver under you, literally under you.
That's crazy. Did you guys ever get into the tunnels?
We didn't go down into them. We would just collapse them. So frag them,
that works.
fire into them, maybe a couple thermites, or just try to collapse it. Yeah. But it gets to the point where it's like you're playing whack-a-mole. The best thing to do is once you've got that compound kind of clear, is to pull out of it and just JDAM it, like on delay. Yeah. Just try to crush it.
Yeah. Man. That's yeah, that's pretty wild. I never dealt with tunnels or anything like that. That's I think that's an interesting aspect that the military is starting to focus on now, is like tunnel warfare and underground shit. You know, in the special operations community.
And I try to stress to people, especially students that I teach, it's never just because your enemy didn't grow up with running water or fucking electricity, don't degrade them. Don't underestimate them at all, because they will still fucking kill you with ingenuity. Because that's all they have.
Yeah. Yeah, they come up with some of the craziest shit. We used to call it an Afghan solution to an Afghan problem. You know, it may not be the way we would do it, but they somehow make something work. I can't remember. I think I was reading a book called Jawbreaker about Afghanistan, and they were talking about in that the Afghans had a helicopter, and the helicopter mechanics, like these CIA guys had or something, were looking at this helicopter like, how is this thing even flying? Like, it's not even the right engine. Like, all this stuff is just like, thrown together to make this helicopter, and they're like recommending that these dudes don't get on it and shit. You know, they're like, you might not want to fly on this one, but yeah, it's working with the Afghans is a super interesting thing though. It like I said, it gives you an appreciation for
absolutely
everything, everything we have, like everything from like electricity to an education, and but they get an education, but it's just in something different. It's in surviving off the land. This agrarian society has a different way of looking at the world than we do, and you kind of have to deal with that and kind of work around, or work to their, I guess, strengths and weaknesses as an advisor and stuff like that. Did you ever? How often were you actually interacting with the Afghans? Were you? Did you guys share meals with them and do all that stuff? It was a full embed.
Yeah. So the way that we had it is most of the Afghan force up there was in fixed positions, like observation posts or checkpoints and stuff like that. But we were right there where their Kandak commander was, and basically what he did was he assembled about a squad of 16 or 18, decent soldiers that he pulled from all around, and they became our permanent team that we worked with. So they actually enjoyed it, because they got, they enjoyed it because we were always getting in firefights, but they enjoyed it the fact that they got their own tent and stuff like that. So that was the group that we would work with, but we would always take them and we'd go visit all the other different Afghan army units throughout the valley and stuff, and check on them and see what they needed, and just ensure they had like security set up right and they weren't going to get just fucking run over.
Yeah. How did you can you rate their ability to operate, like when you guys were in firefights and stuff like that? Like, how did they act in that? Did you ever see them exceed your expectations?
They're not trained. I mean, they're not trained to shoot and maneuver, and you can't blame them. I mean, it's hard. It's like literally trying to take, okay, I'm going to go out on a combat patrol, but I'm also going to bring this kindergarten class with me. And then once we get into a firefight, I'm gonna start yelling at them because they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
Type of deal. But then again, you've got, and you can see it. There's one or two of them, and this was throughout. All my experiences that I've seen. You got these ones and twos that are just locked on, that just know what to do, and those ones are usually the ones that go on to become Afghan commandos.
Yeah. Those were the good dudes.
They don't stay very long in the straight legs.
Yeah. Yeah, we had same deal, with our ANA partners and singing. There were guys that you could tell were not happy to be there, but they wanted to be there. Like, they wanted to help their country. Like, they felt that pride and stuff like that. And then there were guys that would sit around and pick their toes and do as little as possible. It's just, I guess you have that with the Marines too. There's some Marines that just don't want to be there, but not to the same level that you'll see with the Afghan National Army and stuff. Yeah. But is there, you wrote 2 books about this. For those that don't know, I remember when Level Zero Heroes came out, I was super pumped about it coming out. I think I ordered it like the day it came out. I actually looked, I still on my Kindle. And then you also wrote Dagger 2-2, which was kind of a follow-up to that. Do you want to talk about any specific incidents or anything about those 2 books in particular that you want to get out there?
So the reason there's 2, and so it's the same story. It's merely a continuation of the story. So both books together is the entire story. Yeah. Because what we found out was I started writing the first book. In the first book, I had a co-author writing with me, and we started out just writing the story, just writing, and realized that, 2 months into the story, as we're writing it, we hit like 40,000 words. And for those who don't know about like books, like novels and stuff, your typical novel is anywhere from 90 to 110,000 words. Like, that's your typical hardback novel book. So we quickly came to the realization that, hey, if we tell this whole story like I wanted to in the way it needed to be told, this is like a fucking 300,000 word story. So we basically had 2 choices to make. We could either write the whole story and then just start hacking stuff out of it and try to compress the word count down to at least 110,000 words. And that just saying that type of option just doesn't sit well with me. Yeah. So what we ended up doing is we'll write the story. We basically found a natural pause or break in the storyline, which just happens to be New Year's. Of 2000, New Year's of 2009 going into 2010. So we wrote the story incomplete, full up to that point, and the book stands alone. So we never intended, or we didn't know that there was going to be a second book. So we had to write the first book to have, all the book things that you need, like closure. You don't want to cliffhang your readers after putting them through a story like that. So Level Zero Heroes, could have stood on its own as a story, which was great. And then when we literally Level Zero Heroes ends on New Year's Eve, 2009. Dagger 22 starts New Year's Day, 2010, and it continues and tells the rest of the story. So the 2 books together, I highly recommend. Don't read Dagger 22 first. You have to read Level Zero Heroes, then Dagger 22, and you'll see that it's all one complete story. Yeah, for sure. And that was the route we ended up going. Level Zero Heroes was a big success, and then it was just natural. I had already started writing the second one, and just super fortunate, man. Fucking lucky.
It's great that honestly, like we said before, it's the first book that came out that talks about a MARSOC team, and kind of the stuff that they're doing and training and the deployments and stuff like that. But it's also a good book for guys like me, when I was in, and I was like, man, there's a lot of 0861s that are JTACs that would like to go over to MARSOC, but no one knows anything about it. It's like one of those things, unless you're there, because even when you have a buddy that like goes off to go over there, he kind of disappears because
absolutely, dude. Yeah, absolutely.
The op tempo is out of control, and it's one of those things where if you screen for them, they're like, hey man, just be ready to be away from home 300 days a year.
Oh yeah,
if not more.
That's your life. That is because you can't half-ass it. It's all consuming regardless.